A government shutdown is looming and Democrats are holding America hostage. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you as well. And our DC politics editor, Chris Bedford, better known as Happy Shutdown Day to you.
It's a much better day than Tuesday.
There's a lot going on. I feel like this is what Chris Bedford is made for. The Democrats don't stand for anything except for being against President Trump. In the past, Democrats claimed that shutdowns were dangerous. And now a shutdown is their only leverage against Trump.
Donald Trump not only has done nothing, he's seen the costs go up. I think this is the place to throw down and have that fight.
That to some people seems like a stupid idea.
You got to get some wins. Then damn, we need that. We need all 47 of them absolutely at full pedal to the metal, and we need to get them into these fights. TikTok, we are running out of time.
You believe the Republicans will blink and Trump will sign a bill that undoes these cuts?
So yes, this is a righteous fight. I mean, this is the fight to have.
Okay, it's the fight to have. Elizabeth Warren has spoken. But all the Democrats, Chris, they're just gambling here with the public safety and all the virtue signaling that we see now against President Trump.
So, I mean, I normally love a good shutdown, but it is telling when the host said, "Do you think that Trump's going to cave and give you these demands?" She says, "Well, yes." But it was very clear that is not what she thinks. She just didn't really know what to say there. Of course, that's not going to happen. Republicans aren't going to do anything of the sort. If anyone there is going to actually cut a deal, it would be Donald Trump. But why would he cut a deal when he's got all the cards? That's not the way he operates. He's willing to cut a deal when it's actually something that he gets something out of. So there are certain things that he would give to the Democrats, like Obamacare tax subsidies, for example, that he's not interested in getting rid of in the first place anyways. But it would not be in exchange for 1 week or 1 month of funding. That's the kind of thing you give up in exchange for serious policy concessions from the Democrats or agreeing to join maybe a year-long budget. Imagine if the Senate actually passed a year-long budget instead of just series after series of CRs. Extremely, could be what a crazy world we'd live in. But he's got nothing to lose here. Democrats have a whole lot to lose, as has been made clear by their guy, Russ Vought, over at Office of Management and Budget, who has sent out memos to all the executive sprawling bureaucracy saying, here are your instructions for a shutdown. And that's the kind of thing that Democrats like Chuck Schumer wanted to avoid before, but Democrats like Liz Warren are absolutely screaming for now. They know the consequences, but they feel like they just need to throw some red meat to their supporters. They need to do it now. And this is what they're going to do. And it doesn't matter how many bureaucrats get laid off in the process.
I don't know about you guys, but every time I see Liz Warren in one of these situations, I just think you should be at most like principal of a junior high, not a U.S. senator. I mean, principal, but maybe for 6th and 7th graders, please get out of the Senate. I mean, just the whole way in which these people are performative, but she is that particular one.
Listen, I don't want her around the kids any more than she has to be. But Bedford mentioned layoffs. Donald Trump was also talking about layoffs earlier today. There might be a lot of them. Saw it too.
If there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they want to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally, and no system can handle that. And so we're totally opposed on that. But we just can't do it. I'd love to do everybody. I'd love to do the whole world. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits. They want to open the wall again. Can you believe it? I can't even believe it.
I can't even believe it either. I love the way that he just goes out there and he lays it out so plainly, Matt. When we see it, like, this is very clear. Donald Trump is not panicking. The Democrats are the one panicking. Donald Trump's like, yeah, we're going to do it. It's fine.
Well, yeah, as Chris has been telling all of you the whole time, I mean, they have all the cards, but there you just see Trump in one of his best situations. So he's just sitting there comfortable and just kind of laying it out, as you say, like, can you believe this? I can't believe this. But he's doing that. I mean, it's not just off the cuff. He's doing that because he's in a very confident position.
So Bedford, what's the problem here, right? If we go back a few decades, tell us a tale from 2012.
Over shutdowns
Yes.
and the way that those usually roll. Oh yeah, I've been in the back room for some of them, and talking to some of the strategists of early shutdowns, they felt like the dog who caught the car when they got it, because Republican leadership of the Senate looks at them and says, "All right, boys, you got your shutdown. Now what? What's your plan?" And the plan was, well, repeal Obamacare. But at least, there was actually, I think, a point to that. There was a political point to the whole thing, because by the time those elections were coming up, the next round, Democrats had put Obamacare behind them. They're like, that's old news. We don't want to talk about it. But this forced all the Democrats to come forward and say, we, one by one, we defend Obamacare. We stand for Obamacare. Obamacare is where we are. Obamacare is what's going on. It had actual impacts on some Republican races in negative ways as well as positive ways. It certainly ginned up the conservative base and helped them get that base turned out. Of course, it didn't change the fortunes of in the presidential election. It also hurt the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia, who was expected to win. But then Republicans were caught holding the bag for tens of thousands of furlough notices, 100,000 or so furlough notices throughout Northern Virginia federal employees. And that really rubbed them the wrong way. So I'm actually looking at this and wondering, is that going to replay? Right now, the Democrat has a pretty commanding lead in the race to be Virginia governor, the next one, against the lieutenant governor, Republican. But she voted, Allison Spanberger, the Democrat, voted for this shutdown in the House of Representatives. The entire Virginia Democratic delegation is on record voting for this shutdown. Northern Virginia is one of the places that will be most massively impacted by this. When Russ Vought comes in there and says, all right, federal agencies, you have to satisfy three different things. One, look at if your funding is mandatory. If it's not, let's go to step two. Two, are you covered by the big, beautiful bill? Well, you're not. Go to step three. What does step three say? That says, are you in line with what the president wants the government to be doing? Are you part of his vision and his agenda? If you're not, then you're not getting furloughed, you're getting fired. There's a reduction in personnel. Your project is no longer funded. It is gone. It is kaput. And if the next day or the next week or next year, the Senate and the House come back and say, never mind, we want to bring that project back, we are authorizing payment for it, well, then you can reapply for your job. That's actually a pretty tectonic shift. It's seismic. And the Democrats will be responsible for giving the White House, the director of operations and the director of office management and budget, that cudgel with which to root out a huge amount of untouchable bureaucracy. That should play really negatively for Allison Spanberger in Virginia. And if Republicans can capitalize on it, which we all know they're not the best at, if they can capitalize on that, well, then maybe you'll see a Republican governor waiting in Virginia in 1 month's time.
I feel like with Russ Vought, this is like a less sexy version of Doge, but it's going to be just as fun if you actually pay attention. And what the Democrats are doing right now is they're actually going to go through and make Russ Vought. The New York Times is putting out headlines about him right now. And our friend Ned Ryan, who's been on the show before, is like, man, you guys are actually making him even cooler than I thought that it was possible right now. And I can't imagine after the government shuts down, however many days this is going to take for it to get back up, Matt, Russ Vought out there is just going to become more of a legendary figure, I feel like, on the right.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you say, the less sexy version of Doge. I mean, it's Doge. A lot of what OMB does is like that. It's not sexy by nature because it is the Office of Management and Budget, and it deals with numbers and so forth and so on. But Russ Vought, they already know. They've played up as this, Darth Vader, Grim Reaper of government type character. And they should be scared of him because he's very dedicated to this process and to reducing the size of government and getting rid of a lot of this BS. And he's also very knowledgeable. So what Chris is saying here is really important, and it should be music to your ears. It's not only that the Democrats are going to potentially cause the, shut down the government. It's that he's got all kinds of detailed ways to get rid of. I believe, Chris, I want to know the reality of this from you, but I'm hearing, people are talking about tens of thousands of jobs potentially targeted because of the shutdown, that OMB can trigger all kinds of, what you just laid out. They can trigger all kinds of technicalities basically and say like, oh, we don't have the money for this, so this position's over and you're going to have to reapply. In other words, just using the shutdown as a way to accelerate reducing the size of government. And if no one has any doubt that this is something Russ has thought about, has been thinking about obviously recently, but has thought about for a long time and is ready to implement and execute.
And that's the big difference between Russ and Elon is this is not Russ's first rodeo.
Yep.
He spent 4 years as the head of OMB in the first administration. And before that, he spent decades in Washington, D.C., studying this stuff, working on this stuff, learning this stuff, knowing it from the inside. So his first 4 years under Trump at OMB also taught him very much about the deep state. And I'm not talking about the FBI kicking in your door deep state. I'm talking about the bureaucrat who never moves your paperwork, the guy who never responds to your email, the person who gets an order from the president and just sits on it for 2 weeks. And then the next person sits on it for 2 weeks. Those people that frustrate the only democratically elected person in the country's agenda as the American people saw fit to have executed. So he knows who to go after and where. He knows all the different tricks about it. And he's looking at this saying, no, this is not just a blip in funding. If you're not funded permanently, as part of mandatory spending, that all your funding is statutory, all of it comes from Congress, that means your program, as far as I can tell, no longer exists.
Yes.
It's not just we're going to hold it for you. We're going to save your place in line. It's gone. So what he's doing is reduction in force memos, RIFs, or I wish he called them reduction in personnel, RIPs. He's sending those out and saying,
good.
You're pink slipped. I know, what a dad joke. I'm sorry. You're pink slipped. You're done. And if Congress ever comes back and Congress ever reconstitutes you, then they can come to me and say, here's the force I need to do this job. And then I can say, you can hire people, but you can't rehire people. At least not just without a process, not without a government-approved bureaucratic process and an open, fair competition. It's the sort of things that they use to thwart the executive all the time. That's a genius move. And it's the kind of thing the Democrats are really excited to go to the courts about. But guess what? That seems like it's the law to me.
Yes. I mean, this is kind of one of those finally moments, right? I mean, where this is the kind of thing that could have been done for many times over. You just need people who are knowledgeable to do it. So what's the upshot here? What is your estimate? I mean, this potentially could affect 50,000 plus bureaucrats.
I don't even know the number. I wish I had it. I wish I was a calculator here, but I tell you what, I hope that none of my neighbors see this segment. A lot of them, but fortunately, most of them are military, so they will see a blip in paychecks, but they will be paid back pay.
Exactly.
A lot of people traditionally in a shutdown see a blip in paychecks, but if they're not let go because they're covered by mandatory spending like the military is, then they see that paycheck come back. And that can be hard on families. I mean, most Americans really are working paycheck to paycheck. But for those bureaucrats here who are part of those temporary programs are just sprawling. And those bureaucrats who are my neighbors and live in the town next door, and they help populate this whole area and make it so that in 1970s beat up ranch that needs a ton of work costs $1.1 million. Those people are going to lose their jobs. And it is going to be tens of thousands of folks. It's not a small drop in the bucket. And I don't think the courts are going to be able to solve it for them. The only people who can solve it for them is Congress. But like I said, Russ knows the process. And Democrats are going to get their fight out of them. They're going to put in their 5 days, 6 days, maybe 10 days. Who knows? And then when they come back, they're going to see a different Washington, D.C. than they had before. And I think they're going to regret this. It could possibly even be the sort of thing that pushes back against the American left in their power. Because they haven't been punished for any of their losses yet. But I wouldn't bet on that.
Rest up out there. We don't know how long this is going to go on, Bedford. We need you. And it's almost like uncharted territory right now for the Republicans. They have power and they're actually wielding it. This is weird. It's so strange. Weird. It's so strange to see.
So weird.
All right, Bedford. Thanks so much.
I had lunch with a reporter earlier today from left-wing journalism, and he said, what is this philosophy? And he was like, is it fascism? Is it monarchism? And I said, no, it's just using government. It's just
us.
It's called governing.
This side.
That's it.
That's it. But it hasn't been tried in so long that it feels weird and unusual. And people ask these sorts of questions.
Yarvin, it's Russ vote.
Yeah, man, that's it. That's all it's going to be. When we get back, we are going to be talking about the military. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. He had a lot to say after this. I want to thank you for watching and listening to this show. And Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for all the watered down coverage that's out there. And this has never been about one voice or one company. It's about a movement of people who refuse to sit on the sidelines. And right now, we need to carry this mission forward more than ever. So when you subscribe, you're not just supporting a show, you're making sure that the truth has a platform today and for the next generation. You can join Blaze TV today at blazetv.com/BNT and get $20 off right now. That's as low as $8 a month for the annual plan. And you can be a part of shaping the future. It's blazetv.com/BNT. President Trump brought all of the top generals to Northern Virginia this week, and the media is already melting down. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth did not hold back.
Should our enemies choose foolishly to challenge us, they will be crushed by the violence, precision, and ferocity of the War Department. In other words, to our enemies, FAFO. If necessary, our troops can translate that for you.
They can. So we're bringing somebody in with military experience. So here with more, Shaun Rieley. He's the Hillsdale Director of Educational Programs and a teaching fellow. So Shaun, we saw this today, and this was just setting the internet on fire. So what did we learn today from Secretary Hegseth?
Well, I think Secretary Hegseth, no holds were barred, right? He didn't pull any punches, and he said exactly, I think, what has long needed to be said with what's going on with our military. This is a long-standing trend that we've seen. This book by a friend of mine, written back in the 80s, in fact, called Weak Link: The Feminization of the American Military, or something like that. Maybe I've gotten the title not quite right, but it's something along those lines. So people were seeing this trend for a long time now, but I think it's really accelerated in the past few years. And essentially what's happened is we've taken our eye off the ball, right? What's the point of the military? The point of the military is to fight and win wars against America's enemies. That's the bottom line. Everything else is just window dressing. And so, but for the last few decades, the military has worked on doing a number of different things, particularly regarding social policy or political goals that are other than the sort of goal of the military, which is to fight and win wars. And so what Secretary Hegseth announced today is that we're going to get back to that mission. We're going to put at the forefront the warfighter, particularly the person on the ground, the NCO on the ground. And we're going to ask, how can we better make those individuals, those ground leaders, more lethal, more effective at doing their job?
Shaun, I just want to look back for a minute because I saw this graphic, this full screen too. We put that up, before the show that they put together, and it just brought back, the memories of the last few years. And you sit there and go, "Is this real? Did this really happen?" Because it did really happen, right? We had all the talk about wokeness, et cetera. We had, the tranny stuff. We had the bizarre, COVID stuff and the tyranny there. So many people who served. Having to deal with enforced vaccinations. This entire thing is crazy. And I have to imagine for you, like so many other Americans, it was gratifying to then hear Hegseth, right, say this about dudes in dresses. This was an incredible moment.
This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
Now, Shaun, I saw a friend, Wade Miller, and a few others saying, this is like a dream of what a lot of people in the military, this is their dream, right? He's living the dream right now, which is let's call all the generals together and just tell them we're done with this shit. Is that what you
of course, yeah, absolutely. Look, I was an infantryman. I've been texting with my buddies all day saying, did you see this? This is amazing. I mean, I thought that era was over, right? I thought we would never see that come back, and we're kind of living on the fumes of past glory. And so, yeah, no, I had the same reaction, and so did many of my friends who now feel vindicated, really, because I got out in 2012 in part, not entirely, but in part because I couldn't stand another briefing about sexual harassment, about how we have to be nice to, LGBTQ persons that were now joining the military and this kind of thing. I thought, not only do I have to compromise my Christian beliefs on some of this stuff, but just as a basic level, as a warfighter, as an infantryman, I'm being distracted with these trainings, these mandatory trainings that are, making sure that, ostensibly making sure that, we don't make anybody feel bad or excluded or something like this. So, I got out because I couldn't stomach it. I know many people who have stayed in and suffered through it and are now today feeling vindicated because they saw this coming. They have, by the way, kept their mouths shut as policies have changed, stayed loyal, done what the leadership has said. And now it's kind of the shoes on the other foot, right? So yeah, I have the same reaction as many others today, thinking this would never happen again, but here we are. So.
All right, so you and your guys were texting just because you guys saw this and felt compelled, right? I feel like this is where a lot of middle America is right now. It's just like, okay, we're back to this. Top Gun Maverick was a great movie because it made sense. Everybody wants to love their country. And then you get people like at The View with Joy Behar, who was like, why was Pete Hegseth so obsessed with fat and fitness today in his talk? I don't get it. Why was he so obsessed with it? And I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe if we had focused a little bit more on the actual standards and fitness and going out there and just trying to get a prepared military for war, we wouldn't be sitting here having to have this conversation right now. We wouldn't be waiting for somebody like Pete Hegseth to come out there and just say like pretty obvious stuff. I mean, it's not like it was like earth-shattering things, but it resonates with you and everybody else.
For sure. No, that's exactly right. I mean, you would think most of this is common sense, but unfortunately, as with, many big institutions, big bureaucracies, common sense sort of isn't so common often. And so, this has happened as the military has become much more bureaucratized, the kind of bureaucracy has metastasized, and then you have all these kind of CYA, things that come out and then kind of, well, we have to be nice. Can't make anybody feel bad. And this kind of thing. I mean, to the point that even basic training, you mentioned basic training. I mean, when I went to basic training in 2004, the fact that some of the things that he mentioned aren't allowed, drill sergeants say cursing at you or what they call shark swarm or whatever, which basically where the drill sergeants all get on you and, yell at you and that sort of thing. I mean, the truth is I'm surprised that stuff was ever disallowed. But two, if I'd have gone to basic training and I didn't get that experience, I'd have kind of felt ripped off a little bit, because that's what it should be. I think as the secretary pointed out, people that join the military, they want to be challenged, right? They want to do hard things. And so the weakening of the military causes people that might otherwise stay that we really need to sort of look for challenges elsewhere, right? You're not getting it there. And so, you might look elsewhere for that sort of thing. But again, as you say, I mean, this is all common sense stuff. In fact, it's what most people think the military already is. And so, the fact that we're bringing it back, again, really just common sense and really striking in some ways that it even needs to be done.
Yeah, Shaun, I'm so glad you brought up that point too, because that was striking to me when he was talking about, that these things were disallowed. And I had vague memories of, this in the press, like you couldn't, it's hazing and you can't haze anyone. And of course, as he said, we don't want anyone to be abused, but this is also the United States military. and frankly, this is the kind of behavior that you get all the time if you have any kind of team sport, never mind the military, especially when you have a bunch of dudes doing it. And there's a lot of this today felt like to me, it was like some kind of spiritual Karen was in control of the military. And today, Hegseth was like, actually, the boys are back. We're in charge again, bunch of dudes, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to go back to that because we didn't like this.
Right, absolutely. And as he said, females in the military, some of the best, right? No issue with them serving in the capacities that they can. But I actually, when I was in Iraq, I remember the debate about females in infantry combat arms units were raging, and that's been now, I think it's 2015. That was finally the ban on females in combat units was done away with. So we're now a decade past that. But I was in Iraq in 2007 and 2008. I remember this conversation was going on. And I ended up writing to the Stars and Stripes, which is the military newspaper that you get when you're overseas, and saying basically, hey, when the NFL integrates, that's when the U.S. Army infantry should integrate. And before then, or that's when we should talk about it, right? Before then, we shouldn't even talk about it. I mean, when the stakes are an NFL game or season, we don't do this. But when the stakes are winning the war, securing our country, life and death, then this is when we're going to consider it. Seemed crazy to me, but yeah, no, that's right. This is sort of endemic, just sort of part of the culture. And when you water that down, when you take away those kinds of things, it really makes them far less attractive to a lot of the men that you really want there, right? The kind of guys that you want on the line, rough men doing hard things, becomes less attractive, right? So, yeah, I think it's just need a corrective.
It's definitely needed, and it just feels good today, right? Like it's just like, all right, we can relax a little bit, not for long, because as Pete Hegseth says, like we're getting ready for war. It's fine. That's their job, right. But at least for today, we're like, I think something's right in America. And again, enjoy this while it lasts. Shaun Rieley, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
When we get back, something's always not right with J6. We're going to have Steve Baker. He's going to break down the latest, the FBI presence there on J6. He broke the story. We'll get the details from him next. We finally learned the FBI has 274 plainclothes agents that were embedded in the crowd on January 6th. And this number shatters the official narrative and raises serious questions about those agents and what they were doing and why we're only learning about this right now. Steve Baker is our investigative reporter, and he broke this story. So, Steve, what does this mean, these 274 plainclothes agents, and what do we know about what they were actually doing in the crowd?
What does it mean in the grand scheme of things? Really, not much. And this is the surprising part about this story as it unfolded after we reported it on Thursday, was that these 274 agents from the Washington field office were sent out, deployed, or let's say they were ordered to go to the Capitol very haphazardly by the FBI. We did learn one key thing that we learned was that this was a very incompetent operation and response because they were not prepared for this, which is a bit surprising considering that the FBI had already warned Capitol Police in their preliminary intelligence reports going back a couple of weeks before January 6th that there was a firestorm coming that day. And so for the FBI to be completely caught off foot raises a lot more questions, as a matter of fact. But these particular 274 agents were responding, and that's the key word. They were responding to the crisis that was already unfolding, to the riot that was already taking place. And as a result of that, they did not start arriving until after 3. I think the emails, I actually have screenshots of emails between FBI agents and employees wondering what they're doing. They're just getting the message that they're supposed to respond and they're supposed to go to the Capitol. And some of the agents are being told to self-deploy. Some are being told to meet up with a certain group or a task force at a certain address. They don't know what to do. And so they started coming in haphazardly, dragging in sometime after 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I have FBI agents on my own camera from that day arriving at the Capitol after 6 p.m. for the first time. So it's a very strange report. And it's not a good look for the FBI at the time. We're not talking about today's FBI. Not that there's a lot of difference between the two, but that's another story. We're here to make friends, as we always are. But nevertheless, this was a strange incident in the grand scheme of what the FBI's overall involvement was on January 6th.
So Steve, explain to me, so what plain clothes means here, because some people, mistook this headline and this news, and we're talking about, oh, you guys are wrong because there weren't 274 people undercover. We need to know how many people were undercover or informants that day who were, there the entire time or in the beginning. But explain what you mean by plainclothes here.
Well, first of all, the FBI doesn't have an official uniform, unlike the Capitol Police or other law enforcement agencies. Today's FBI doesn't have even a national uniform dress code. They can come up to your house and do a knock and talk on your, if they're investigating one of your Facebook posts, and they'll be wearing a flannel shirt and jeans or khakis and a T-shirt, but they will have to identify themselves in some way. But on this particular incident, this 274 agent story, when they responded to the call to participate in crowd control. All right, when that call comes out, first thing you have to know is this is not what the FBI does. And the second thing you need to know about it is they don't have any training for crowd control whatsoever. None, zero. It's not in the manual. It's not taught to them at Quantico. It's not at the academy. It's not something they do annual training on. It just doesn't happen. So what they did is those agents who got the call went to their car, went to their closet, wherever it was or wherever they were, and they got their ballistic vests, which is marked clearly on the front, FBI. It's clearly on the back, FBI. Some of them had ball caps that said FBI. Some of them had jackets emblazoned in FBI. They clearly had their guns carried on the outside. They had their badges displayed. So when they showed up at the Capitol, that was plain clothes. They were not undercover. And that's why Joe Hanneman and myself, when we saw this report come out from Kash Patel, this thing that he released on Fox Digital over the weekend, which said that they were out there doing crowd control, both Joe and I immediately started DMing each other going, this is BS, because we've seen thousands of hours of video. Nobody's seen and poured and done closer examination of this video than Joe and I for the last 4 years. And the one thing that we never saw one single time at any time during the riot or during the clearing of the Capitol of the protesters was FBI agents assisting in clearing the Capitol or assisting in crowd control. It just did not happen. Now, that does not mean that they weren't ordered and told to go do that. It's just they didn't do that.
Okay, so with this crowd control, you're saying it's just not part of what the FBI does in general. And Kash Patel put out this, this article on Fox Digital over the weekend. So what do we think was the purpose of that then? If it wasn't actually crowd control, is there some other narrative that Kash is trying to push? What do we think is trying to be done by saying it was crowd control by the FBI?
Look, I've been asked over and over again, is Kash lying? Was Kash lied to? I don't think that either one is correct now that I've had a 4 days to analyze this in its totality. I don't think that he was lying about this. In fact, the original report, the actual after action report compiled by the old FBI after January 6th was that this was a response, an ordered response to initiate crowd control assistance to local law enforcement, the Capitol Police, Metropolitan PD, by the FBI personnel that were arriving at the time. So that is the narrative inside the after action report. This predates Kash Patel being the director. So this is not a lie. Where I think the mistake is that this thing was put out in such a way is that it implied that these were finally the insurrectionists we've been looking for. This is the proof of the Fedsurrection. And guess who jumped on that narrative? It was President Trump. President Trump's Truth Social post is he reacted in the same way that so many on social media did when they saw this. Okay, well there you have it right there in front of us. And this was a look, Trump is going to do Trump, and we know that he is the ultimate troller on in social media, on X, Twitter, and now Truth Social. And so this was a reaction by him to this, which tells me that there was not a coordinated public affairs announcement between the FBI and between the White House. And in fact, the two messages are in conflict with each other, what Patel put out and what the White House put out here. And that's regardless of who drafted these narratives, either one. And it's created a lot of confusion. I mean, I had people just absolutely angry at me and telling me on X over the weekend that I was just flat out lying about this because they thought I was saying that Kash was lying. No, I wasn't saying that Kash was lying. They thought I was saying that Kash was lying about 274 agents being deployed. I wasn't saying that. I was saying they didn't do crowd control. That's what I know. I don't know about the other things. I know that they didn't do crowd control because we would have seen it in the video in the thousands of hours that we've spent analyzing that video, and it just didn't happen.
So, in other words, there's an unforced error here because Trump didn't have to tweet this or be confused about it because because what you're saying is most of these people, the 274 people from the FBI, plainclothes, they all arrived after the fact, basically, right?
That's correct. That 274.
Yeah.
Now, there were agents that were actually SWAT team. There was the hostage rescue team, HRT, that are not included in that number. And so the tactical units that participated in January 6th, they arrived a little earlier than that. We see them arriving around 2:30, 2:40, something like that, in their armored vehicles at the Capitol. We see them coming in the south entrance of the Capitol in what they call the Hall of Columns. And guess just who happened to be there as they arrived, and we saw the tactical units of the FBI, their medics, working on Ashley Babbitt on the floor right in front of the door of the south exit of the Capitol, and that was me, yours truly. And then I captured her exit on the gurney by the EMTs 60 seconds later after I passed by the FBI medics working on her at the time. And so obviously, it's something that I'm very familiar with, and those were the first FBI personnel on the scene were the tactical units, and they did assist clearing out the House chamber. By then, the Senate chamber had been pretty much clear, but we have also seen video of FBI tactical units escorting representatives from the House down the stairway into the tunnels. So they were assisting. And then we saw tactical teams, not only of the FBI, but ATF and others assisting clear the Capitol. But we did not see plainclothes FBI agents clearing the Capitol, standing the line with police, or assisting in crowd control in any way. And that is what has been so confusing about this. And then, and I didn't really answer your question specifically, but we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. Undercover, plainclothes, uniformed FBI has confused a lot of people, but there are no uniforms in the FBI. They're either plainclothes or they're in tactical gear. And when they're called into a dangerous situation, they all have them. They put on their ballistic vests, and that's how they arrived when they arrived, that 274. The question is were there other FBI agents at the Capitol other than the 274?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do want to ask that in the time we have. I mean, what do we know then about any other FBI agents who were there? I mean, and that's what most people would say, that we use the word undercover or, informant, people who either are, work for the FBI, right, in some way and were not in plainclothes or tactical gear.
I'm going to answer that in a couple of different ways, a couple of different layers here. The first thing that we absolutely know is just a few months ago, they finally admitted to us that the FBI had a significant number of confidential human sources. These are not FBI employees. These are assets of the FBI. They are paid assets of the FBI that were embedded with groups like the Proud Boys. We know that number is an absolute crock. It's a lie. We know that number is much higher. from the trials themselves. We know that the even the trial attorneys for the Proud Boys are being prevented from releasing the actual number because it's still under court seal. We estimate that the Proud Boys alone had anywhere from 40 to 70 assets that infiltrated them that day. Then you add to that the Oath Keepers. Then you add that to other groups that they were following, that they had assets deployed as well. There were groups larger than the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers there that day that haven't got the press. But these groups were certainly also infiltrated. It's what the FBI does. And then, of course, there's the unanswered question as to why the FBI did not have their counter surveillance teams there that day, because this gigantic event with hundreds of thousands of people in the Capitol was not declared a national security event. And therefore, the FBI counter surveillance teams were on stand down. Most of them were on leave that day. And so they just weren't even there. But we also know that there were FBI agents from all over the country that were Trump supporters that were in the crowd, and including local FBI agents that were Trump supporters. So it was a mixed bag that day. But I'm not going to say this is my final comment because this is going to continue on. But I will tell you, none of this makes sense in light of the fact that the FBI, we have congressional testimony that the FBI warned the Capitol Police days and weeks in advance that there was trouble coming. And we know that the FBI had, under their command, they had seconded or seconded, however you pronounce that. Under their command, they had the three-letter federal agencies tactical units from all of those agencies in the area. They had them pre-deployed in the Capitol District, even days before January 6th. They knew something was coming. And so for them to not have their counter surveillance teams out, for them to claim that they did not have either plain clothes or undercover agents in the crowd that day, that it's only these 274 that came after the violence and after the riot had already started, makes no sense. There's still something that they're holding back and they're not telling us the truth about. And this is something that the seventh floor of the Hoover Building should know. And they should be able to be, in this age of transparency from this administration, they should be able to tell us and clear this confusion up as well.
One thing I know for sure when it comes to J6, Steve Baker will never have his final words. This will continue to go on because we know things are just ramping up with the new select subcommittee for J6. And Steve Baker, Joe Hanneman, they'll be all over it. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
When we come back, government shutdown day, we'll get your replies. Is it good? Is it bad? Are you indifferent? After this. Stop me if you've heard this, but we're facing a government shutdown. And I was like, you know what? Is that really the worst thing, though? So this is my question on X today, along with this meme that reads that the only thing that I fear more than a government shutdown is the government staying open. So do you want a government shutdown? Gilbert starts us off with the only problem that I see with the government shutdown is it won't stay shut down. So exactly what I'm feeling in these vibes. It's very Ronald Reagan-esque today.
It's as if you don't care. You just don't care. Jill doesn't. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Jill does not care. The government shut down. All those poor employees.
Well, like I said, we were talking about it earlier. The military, they will get their back pay. It'll be fine. But the rest of it, like, we can operate without a lot of government, and we should put it to the test. We should see.
It's just savage.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay. And you know what? I think that Daryl, who's up next, I think Daryl understands the problem that we're in, because he says that we are $40 trillion in debt. We need drastic changes to survive. Do you see drastic changes? I sure don't. Daryl was ready for you. That's what I'm saying. He was ready to come back at you today, Matt.
I'm a devil's advocate today. You know,
No.
Here's the thing, Daryl. Yeah, $40 trillion in debt. I've heard that. But we have these machines and we can print more money, you know?
Yeah, they don't even have to print the money anymore. They just add zeros on government computers now, and things happen. And I'm sure that that's going to go well for the rest of time, and we won't have any problems from that. Let's go ahead and get to Shelley, who replied that somebody needs to insist that Congress do their jobs. No more CRs, no more government shutdowns. Make a budget and stick to it. In the real world, if people ran their companies like the government, they would be out of business or possibly in jail. Why not? Why not all? Why not all of the above, right? If we did what the government did, we would all be in trouble.
I'm going to stick with the devil's advocacy.
Yes.
You know, here's the problem, Shelley. Like, you think that you want Congress to do their job? What if I told you that this is their job?
I need
print money and give it to their friends.
That is actually the saddest thing that might have ever been said on this show, because it's so true, but it really does hurt.
Yeah, no, okay. Don't have to hit to hurt.
Yeah, you don't. Words hurt too, as the lefties will definitely tell you. With the time that we have left, let's get rid of Devil's Advocate Matt, because I hate him. Matt's great. Devil's Advocate Matt, no part of this. With the time that we have left, J6, moving forward. As we heard from Steve Baker, right? He's been on the show before, and he's saying with Barry Loudermilk, Representative Loudermilk, at the head of the new select subcommittee for J6, that they are going to get every missing puzzle piece that they have been wanting to know. And I feel like this is the first step in actually proving that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is good, but we got a long way to go here. And I think what Steve said at the end of the show is actually the cutting edge of what anyone knows about the question everyone wants to know more about, which is how many undercover, informants were there, because we want to know if there was any pressure on the part of those informants to break the law and basically incite people to do things they shouldn't have done that day. And Steve is as close to anyone on this case. He knows, a ton of things he's working on he can't reveal yet. But I think that what he was saying was they've already told us there was a bunch of people who were there, who were informants, who were undercover. We know that these groups were full of them. They're full of feds, as we say. And we don't even know the full number of people who were involved in January 6th who also worked for the government or were paid by the government. So that's something that we do need to know, and President Trump needs to know, and I believe wants to know, and I sure hope, and I believe Kash Patel also wants to know it, but the problem is, how does he not know that already, right, given that he's in that job? Where is that information? We have a long way to go, but I do know that there are people in different parts of the federal government who are working on it, and Steve's going to report more on it. But it just shows, like, we're not stopping with this because we have the same curiosity that all of you do. And it's not just curiosity. It's about saving our country and rectifying wrong.
Well, because if things aren't fixed, if they aren't at least put out into the open, and somebody actually goes through and tries to tell the truth about this, then we are absolutely going to be in a position where something like this could happen again. So we need to make sure and make an example out of this case. And if I were Kash Patel and I had all those lists, you couldn't stop me from reading all of this stuff right now. Like, we get Baker, and I can tell you, everybody loves when Steve Baker comes on the show because everybody out there, they want to know what happened. So if you have unfiltered access to all of the information, you better be looking it up, because if you're not, Steve Baker is coming for you. Joe Hanneman is going to have a lot of things to say and uncover, and that's what we'll keep doing here at The Blaze, that's for sure. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow
I hope the
night.
FBI is just working on a report in the background.